We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
The death toll from a new coronavirus outbreak surges past 1,000 as the World Health Organization warns infected people who have not traveled to China could be the spark for a bigger fire.
Local carriers Philippine Airlines, Cebu Pacific and Air Asia Philippines canceled on Tuesday their services to from Taiwan until further notice amid the expanded travel ban imposed by the Philippine government to stop the spread of novel coronavirus.
U.S. Democrats brace for a volatile, consequential primary in New Hampshire as leftist Bernie Sanders and youthful challenger Pete Buttigieg fight for pole position in the race for who faces President Trump in November's presidential election.
And the Department of Foreign Affairs announced that Foreign Affairs Secretary Chidoro Locsin Jr. has signed the Notice of Termination of the Visiting Forces Agreement, or VFA, with the United States.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. The death toll from a new coronavirus outbreak surged past 1,000 on Tuesday as the World Health Organization warned infected people who have not traveled to China could be the spark for a bigger fire. An advanced team for a WHO-led international expert mission arrived in China as the country struggles to contain a viral epidemic that has now infected more than 42,000 and reached some 25,000 countries. Another 108 deaths were reported on Tuesday, the first triple-digit rise since the virus emerged. The first death was reported on January 11. The number of deaths has increased 1,000-fold in just 1 month, reaching 1,016, though the mortality rate remains relatively low at 2.4%. Chinese authorities have locked down millions of people in a number of cities, while several governments have banned arrivals from China, and major airlines have suspended flights to keep the disease away from their shores. But the case of a British man who passed on the virus to at least 11 other people without having been in China has raised fears of a new phase of contagion abroad. Most cases abroad have involved people who had been in Wuhan, the quarantined central Chinese city where the virus emerged late last year, or people infected by others who had been at the epicenter.
The case of a British man who passed on the virus to at least 11 other people without having been in China has raised fears of a new phase of contagion abroad. Most cases abroad have involved people who had been in Wuhan, the quarantined central Chinese city where the virus emerged late last year, or people infected by others who had been at the epicenter. The adult British citizen who has not been named publicly caught the virus while attending a conference in Singapore and then passed it on to several compatriots while on holiday in the French Alps, before finally being diagnosed back in Britain. Of those infected by the man, 5 have been hospitalized in France, 5 in Britain, and 1 other man on the Spanish island of Mallorca.
Recent days, we have seen some concerning instances of onward transmission from people with no travel history to China, like the cases reported in France yesterday and the United Kingdom today. The detection of this small number of cases could be the spark that becomes a bigger fire. But for now, it's only a spark. Our objective remains containment.
The British government called the novel coronavirus a serious and imminent threat and said anyone with the disease can now be forcibly quarantined if they are deemed to a threat to public health, as the number of cases in Britain doubled to 8.
And Asia's biggest air show opened in Singapore on Tuesday under the shadow of a deadly coronavirus outbreak that has forced dozens of companies to withdraw and is threatening to hammer the aviation industry. The biennial Singapore Air Show attracts hundreds of global aerospace firms and airlines to the financial hub, where they negotiate multi-million-dollar deals and watch spectacular aerial displays by fighter jets. But the virus is overshadowing this year's event. Singapore has so far reported 45 cases, and the city-state last week raised its health alert level to the same as during the deadly 2002-2003 SARS outbreak. The number of exhibitors deciding to skip the show has now climbed to over 70. Withdrawals include U.S. aerospace giant Lockheed Martin, which makes warplanes and defense equipment used by militaries around the world, Canada's Bombardier and plane maker de Havilland. There are some 930 exhibiting companies and more than 40,000 trade attendees from more than 45 countries, down from the last edition of the show in 2018, when over 54,000 trade participants and more than 1,000 companies took part. Nevertheless, major players such as Boeing, seeking to recover from a crisis sparked by fatal crashes involving its 737 MAX model, and Airbus were still in attendance, and organizers struck an upbeat note.
I noticed that there are quite a couple of booths which were empty this morning. I think some people didn't turn up, and others they seem to have a reduced presence. I think it will affect, but not in the long run. I think this is a very short time. I don't see a dip in the business overall because of this virus, actually. But okay, like we had actually every day quite a number of meetings fixed. So far, most of them still go ahead, but some people have actually said that they have to cancel the meeting. So I'm sure, especially with some of the big companies, that will be the case. That some deals are not going to be going signed or whatever, or announced.
It does have a little impact on the confidence and the morale for the rest of the exhibitors. Yeah, but you know, resources, investment having poured in. Okay, of course, if there's no official announcement that you have to cancel the show, yeah, we will still proceed. Yeah, right. I believe this will be just a short-term impact. Yeah, even though travel restrictions. Okay, but life goes on, right? Yeah, business still must proceed as usual. Yeah, that's why the air show will still continue.
For 8 days, an AFP team lived and worked at the center of a global health emergency, witnessing how life in the Chinese city of Wuhan was turned upside down as it was cut off from the world, and as an extraordinary health crisis gathered pace around the world. Watch this.
This is Wuhan, ground zero of the coronavirus epidemic, which is causing alarm worldwide. The usually bustling central Chinese city of 11 million people has become a ghost town as residents stay in their homes with normal life on hold. A man lies dead on the street, unattended for at least 2 hours, a clear sign of how stretched the city's emergency services are. AFP could not confirm how he died, but authorities take no chances. What is clear, though, is that the virus has caused hundreds of deaths. Within China, the number of fatalities and infections is rising daily, and the outbreak has spread to more than 20 countries. In Wuhan, a steady stream of ambulances bring in sick patients to overstretched hospitals. Memories of the deadly SARS virus have been resurrected, and fear is stalking the country.
I don't know the results yet. I'm a bit worried. I'm infected.
Every family stays at home instead of going out. Everyone tries to have less communication. Because the epidemic's growing quite fast, the government's doing a lot of prevention and control work.
A new 1,000-bed hospital was built in 10 days, with military medics and experts brought in to help deal with the crisis. Spread of the disease prompted the Chinese government to lock down several cities and restrict travel. The death of Li Wenliang, whistleblowing doctor who was reprimanded for warning about the virus, has sparked rare calls for political reform and free speech in China.
He's a hero. I fully agree. He's very brave and honest to be able to say the truth to people.
In a cruel twist of fate, the outbreak coincided with the Lunar New Year, when hundreds of millions of people crisscrossed China. For this couple, there were few festivities, just a quiet dinner under lockdown.
Normally, during the New Year, we would go visit family and friends. We saw elders to wish them Happy New Year. We saw family to wish them Happy New Year. It was a very lively moment, but this year is different. We can't go everywhere we want. We can only stay home.
It's another day in Wuhan. Scenes like this have become commonplace. It was at this seafood market, which was also selling exotic wildlife, where the virus is thought to have emerged late last year. From these humble surroundings, a crisis has been unleashed, and effects are being felt not just in China, but increasingly across the world.
Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping donned a face mask and had his temperature checked while visiting medical workers and patients affected by the deadly coronavirus that has killed more than 900 people. Take a look. The president, who is called the virus a demon, made a rare public appearance amid the outbreak to meet frontline medical staff at a hospital treating infected patients. Calling the situation at the virus epicenter still very grave, President Xi urged more decisive measures to contain the spread of the treatment of patients and speak via video link to doctors in Wuhan. He then visited a residential community in central Beijing to investigate and guide efforts to contain the epidemic.
U.S. President Donald Trump said he expected the coronavirus outbreak that has killed more than 900 people to disappear in April due to hotter weather.
Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, as the heat comes in. Typically, that will go away in April. We're in great shape, though. We have 11 cases, and many of them are in good shape now. But a very good question.
The SARS-like pathogen has infected 40,000 people since its emergence in China late last year. The United States has seen 12 confirmed cases of varying severity. At least 2 patients have been discharged.
Meanwhile, the 2 most senior health officials at the epicenter of the outbreak in China have been sacked, according to state media, as pressure mounts over the way local authorities have handled the epidemic. Now, Zhang Jin, the Communist Party boss of the Provincial Health Commission in Hubei, and its director Liu Yingzhi have been removed from their positions, according to CCTV, after a decision by the province's party committee on Monday. The area has found itself at the center of a coronavirus outbreak that has killed more than 1,000 people and infected over 42,000 across China since December. Local officials have faced mounting pressure for perceived incompetence, particularly after the death of a Chinese doctor in the provincial capital, Wuhan, who was punished for raising the alarm about the new virus. According to state media, there have been hundreds of sackings, investigations, and warnings across Hubei and other provinces during the outbreak. Analysts have said local authorities played down the extent of the outbreak in early January because they were holding political meetings at the time and wanted to protect an image of stability. More than 3/4 of the deaths have been in Hubei's provincial provincial capital Wuhan, the center of the outbreak, and Hubei remains on virtual lockdown to curb the spread of the virus.
In Hong Kong, dozens of households were evacuated from an estate on Monday night and taken into quarantine after cases were detected there. More than 100 people were evacuated from a 35-story Hong Kong housing block on Tuesday after 2 residents in different apartments tested positive for the new coronavirus. The families were forced to leave in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Officials say the relocation operation in the Tsing Yi district was a precautionary measure. Hong Kong is on high alert for any potential super spreader events, especially in the towering housing blocks that make the city one of the world's most densely populated places. There are 42 confirmed cases of the virus in Hong Kong, including a cluster of 10 family members who had all shared a hot pot meal with an infected person.
Meanwhile, Philippines becomes the latest country to impose travel ban on Taiwan due to a deadly coronavirus outbreak in China. Take a look. On Monday, the Department of Health said Taiwan is included in the list of areas where OFWs are temporarily not allowed to travel. The Department of Health earlier said Taiwan, in addition to Hong Kong and Macau, is included in the ban since WHO follows the One China policy. Meanwhile, the Department of Labor and Employment said overseas Filipino workers affected by the travel ban to Taiwan are also entitled to receive cash assistance from the government. Labor Secretary Silvestro Bello III said Filipino workers bound for Taiwan affected by the travel ban and are members of the OWA, or Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, will be getting financial assistance. Cebu Pacific and Philippine Airlines canceled several inbound and outbound flights to Taiwan. Air Asia also said all flights between Philippines and Taipei and Kaohsiung have been canceled until further notice from the government.
And the natural consequence of the travel ban would be a steep decline in the number of flights to and from these affected or areas like Taiwan, China, Hong Kong, Macau, and now Taiwan. For example, in China, we have about 47 daily flights all over mainland China, and now maybe about 6 or 8. And because there are no more traffic, no more visitors, and if there are no more flights, then we would be resorting to special flights.
Taiwan hits out at countries that confuse it with China after the Philippines becomes the latest to impose a travel ban on the island over the deadly coronavirus outbreak.
就是因为这个武汉肺炎，所以很多国家因为他们的一个一中政策，所以也把台湾纳入这个中国的一部分，所以就延伸了这相关的这个问题。我们其实已经通电各外管处，要积极的跟相关的政府说明，第一个，台湾不是中国，台湾不是中国的疫区，所以不要把我们混为一体。然后呢，第二个，疫情的发展是非常不一样的，我们这边没有高风险性，我们连社区感染都没有，他们那边是高风险性、高传染性的一个疫情。 中国的阴影，我想一向都存在了。我们刚刚看到，其实这个菲律宾卫生部他就讲了，他其实给这个，我想这个他的这个公告大家也都看到了，对不对哦？这个公告上面就明白第一条讲 ，includes Taiwan under the One China policy.
Despite its cultural links and close proximity to China, Taiwan moved swiftly against the outbreak and currently has just 18 confirmed cases of the new virus. But the self-ruled democracy has found itself increasingly caught up in travel restrictions aimed at China, where the outbreak has killed more than 1,000 people and infected over 42,000. Late Monday, the Philippines confirmed its current travel ban for China was being expanded to Taiwan under the so-called One China policy. Beijing views Taiwan as its own territory, part of a One China, and has vowed to eventually take the island by force if necessary. Taiwan's foreign ministry on Tuesday described that decision as wrong and unilateral.
Meanwhile, a team of UK scientists believe they're one of the first to start animal testing of a vaccine for the new coronavirus that has killed more than 900 people and spread around the world. Take a look. Researchers at Imperial College London said their ultimate goal was to have an effective and safe way of halting the SARS-like strain spread by the end of the year. Imperial College London researcher Paul McKay said, quote, "We're hoping that over the next few weeks we'll be able to determine the response that we can see in those mice in their blood, their antibody response to the coronavirus." Scientists across the world are racing to develop a way to stamp out a new strain of a well-known virus that has been successfully combated in the past. Imperial College London said it cannot be sure how advanced other teams' research is at the moment, but the animal tests they began running Monday were one of the first. Britain has recorded 8 cases and been forced to shut down 2 branches of a medical center in the southeast city of Brighton, where at least 2 staff members tested positive. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
When visiting the Philippines, Manila or Quezon City is a popular destination. But oftentimes the hustle and bustle of the city can be more stressful on your vacation. So when you feel the need to reconnect to nature or relax again, there's a beautiful oasis just outside of the city called the Garden at Ciudad de Victoria. That you can see here include hydrangea, snapdragon, and stargazers. They're truly beautiful. The gardens at Ciudad de Victoria are so peaceful, tranquil, and beautiful that it's become a haven for young couples and a very popular venue for engagement photos. The next time you want an escape from the big city, the garden at Ciudad de Victoria is a wonderful place to visit.
Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. has signed the Notice of Termination of the Visiting Forces Agreement, or VFA, with the United States, the Department of Foreign Affairs confirmed today, or Tuesday. On the order of the President, through Executive Secretary Medialdea, Foreign Affairs Secretary Locsin signed today the Notice of Termination of the Visiting Forces Agreement, which will be delivered to the U.S. Embassy in Manila forthwith, DFA Undersecretary Brigido Dulay said on his official Twitter account. In a separate statement, Locsin himself said U.S. Embassy Deputy Chief of Mission John Law has received the notice. The Deputy Chief of Mission of the Embassy of the United States has received the Notice of Termination of the Visiting Forces Agreement. As a diplomatic courtesy, there will be no further factual announcements following this self-explanatory development, he said. A VFA established in 1999 provides a framework for defense forces cooperation and allows joint exercises between the two states. The U.S. Embassy in Manila described the move as a serious step with significant implication for the Philippines or U.S.-Philippines alliance. In a statement, it said it will carefully consider how best to move forward to advance Manila and Washington's shared interests. The Philippines has sent to the U.S. the termination for the Visiting Forces Agreement between the two countries, Palace spokesman Salvador Panelo said. Presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo reiterated that President Duterte's decision to scrap the VFA was in retaliation for U.S. Senators' interference in the case of Senator Leila de Lima, who is currently detained at the Philippine National Police Custodial Center at Camp Crame in Quezon City due to her involvement in illegal drugs.
Anyway, we would like to confirm the President directed the Executive Secretary Salvador Medellea to tell Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin of the Foreign Affairs to send a notice of termination to the U.S. government last night. And the Executive Secretary sent the message to Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin, and the latter signed the notice of termination and sent to the U.S. government today. 180 days from the receipt of the notice of termination. So, meron din namang mga ibang bansa na nag-offer. But, as the President said, it's about time we rely on our own resources. We have to strengthen our own capability as a country relative to the defense of our land. Yan ang pinakaano ni Presidente. Mahirap yung keep on relying, lalo tayong humihina. Because I've been noticing that those who've been critical of the U.S. government policies have been given the preferential attention of the U.S. government. Pag nababanata sila, sinusuyo nila. Yung mga kakampi nila, inaapi nila. Parang ganun ang dating. Kasi palaging si Presidente sinasabi niya, if we have to deal with other countries, we have to deal on the basis of equality and fairness. Hindi pa pwedeng one-sided agreement. Yun ang palaging sinasabi ni Presidente. Banning by the immigration authorities, Senator, or rather canceling his U.S. visa of Senator Bato is an executive function, not the Senate of the U.S. Immigration yun. Executive yun.
Panelo emphasized that President Duterte felt that the actions made by U.S. lawmakers were as good as assaulting the country's sovereignty.
I'm not sure, but isn't there a need for the U.S. to also respond and maybe react?
Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy in Manila on Monday dismissed as fraudulent the reported cancellation of tourist visas for Filipinos. The U.S. Embassy in the Philippines is aware of a fraudulent advisory alleging the cancellation, revocation of tourist visas, and the suspension of visa applications. These claims, they said, are not true. This is according to U.S. Embassy spokesperson Heather Fabricant on Monday. The embassy also said U.S. visa policy in the Philippines has not changed. The misinformation supposedly originated from imposters claiming to be an official U.S. source. The U.S. Embassy spokesperson Heather Fabricant also said the official U.S. Embassy website at ph.usembassy.gov and our official social media platforms are the best sources for accurate and current information. To report visa and passport fraud, please email fpmmanila@state.gov. A screenshot of the fake advisory circulating online said the U.S. Department of State ordered the cancellation of all current and existing B1 and B2 tourist visas, and that the embassy shall no longer accept B1 and B2 applications and renewals on February 15, 2020 due to the 2019 novel coronavirus outbreak. And these are fake news.
U.S. President Donald Trump holds a rally on the eve of the New Hampshire presidential primary, taking the opportunity to blast Democrats and suggest to supporters to cross over party lines and vote for the weakest candidate possible of the Democrats.
With your help on November 3rd, we are going to defeat the radical socialist Democrats. We are going to win New Hampshire in a landslide. On Tuesday, I delivered my address on the State of the Union. And I had somebody behind me who was mumbling terribly, mumbling, wah, wah, ho, ha. He was mumbling. Very distracting. Very distracting. We hear that there could be, because you have crossovers in primaries, don't you? So I hear a lot of Republicans tomorrow will vote for the weakest candidate possible of the Democrats. Does that make sense? You people wouldn't do that. My only problem is I'm trying to figure out who is their weakest candidate. I think they're all weak, one another.
Iowa's vote is considered the kickoff to the nominations race. But New Hampshire tends to set the tone for the long state-by-state primaries battle and weed out the weakest candidates. The results from New Hampshire's century-old primary tradition are closely watched by the rest of the nation, though, and for good reason. World War II General Dwight Eisenhower won the state's primary in 1952, a victory that set him on the path to the White House and cemented the state's role in American political life. Of the 17 presidential elections since then, 14 candidates who won their party's nomination contest in New Hampshire went on to become president. Of the 3 remaining times, a runner-up in the state won the White House. In other words, little hope for anyone coming third. But the 2020 race remains wide open, with 11 candidates still chasing the Democratic Party's nomination. A National Democratic frontrunner, former Vice President Joe Biden, is polling a distant third in New Hampshire behind Senator Bernie Sanders and former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
No previous president of the United States has ever asked us to trade our character for cash. Trump thinks he has an economic headwinds at his back in this election, more than any president seeking re-election, making him much harder to beat. But Trump talks about the longest job growth in American history, 112 months of increased employment and growth. Trump has only been president for 35 of those months. Trump's going to tell us over and over again that the economy is on the ballot this year. It sure is. And I'm going to make sure he understands it's on the ballot, because working class and middle class people are getting clobbered. But something else is on the ballot. Character is on the ballot. The character of this country is on the ballot.
Turnout tells me why we're going to win here in New Hampshire, why we're going to win the Democratic nomination, and why we are going to defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of America, Donald Trump. Donald Trump hopes to win re-election by dividing our people up based on the color of their skin, where they were born, their sexual orientation, their gender, or their religion. It won't work, because we are going to do exactly the opposite. We're going to bring our people together.
Let's remember that we're facing the most divisive president of our time, which is why we can't risk dividing Americans further. The idea that you've either got to be for a revolution or you got to be for the status quo leaves most of us out. And here we are at decision time, and it is so critically important that we get this right. So much is on the line. So let me begin by asking you to form in your mind the image that guides a whole lot of what this campaign is doing. And it's the image of how it's going to feel that first time that the sun comes up over Nashua and Donald Trump is no longer the president of the United States.
After New Hampshire, the candidates turned to Nevada on February 22 and South Carolina on February 29, both more diverse states. Then comes Super Tuesday on March 3, when 14 states vote. Also in the race is billionaire and former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who has spent a record $260 million of his personal fortune on his campaign. He is skipping the first four nominating contests, focusing instead on Super Tuesday.
More than 100 U.S. troops sustained mild traumatic brain injury, far more than originally announced when Iran launched missiles at their base in Iraq last month, according to the Department of Defense. The Pentagon statement said, quote, as of today, 109 U.S. service members have been diagnosed with mild traumatic brain injury, or MTBI, an increase of 45 since the previous report. Of them, 76 have returned to duty, while most of the rest are still undergoing evaluation and treatment. President Trump had initially said that no Americans were injured in the strike on the Ain al-Assad base in western Iraq on the night of January 7 to 8, although authorities later reported that 11 troops were injured. Iran fired ballistic missiles at the base to retaliate for the January 3 U.S. drone strike that killed top Iranian General Qasem Soleimani while he was in Baghdad.
An emotional Thai army chief on Tuesday urged a nation in mourning over a mass shooting not to blame the army after a soldier gunned down at least 29 people in a rampage linked to a debt dispute with a senior officer.
เพราะฉะนั้นอย่าด่าว่ากองทัพบกอย่าว่าทหารนะครับถ้าฉันจะด่าท่านจะตำหนินะฮะท่านมาด่าพลเอกอภิรัตน์ของสมพงษ์ผมน้อมรับคำตำหนิการแสดงความคิดเห็นทุกอย่างท่านมาด่าผมเพราะผมเป็นผู้บัญชาการทหารบกท่านอย่าด่ากองทัพบก
General Apirat Kong Sompong, an arch-royalist more commonly prone to rants against pro-democracy figures, broke down in tears as he apologized during a televised press conference on behalf of the army to the victims of the shooting. The gunman, Sergeant Major Jakrapanth Toma, was shot dead by a commando unit Sunday morning, ending a 17-hour rampage that left 29 dead and scores more wounded. The Thai army has been at pains to portray him as a rogue soldier rather than a product of the army system. Apirat said he would not stand down from his post. General Apirat pleaded not to blame the army but to blame him, and instead he pledged to open a special channel to investigate all future complaints from junior officers about their superiors. He blamed the attack on a debt dispute between the gunman and his commanding officer. General Apirat said the gunman did not receive justice from his commander and his relatives, who promised him financial returns, apparently from a commission over the sale of house. Jakrapanth killed his commander and the commander's mother-in-law first as he embarked on an around 17-hour shooting spree inside a mall.
Partia Ari hid in a shop just meters from a Thai soldier on a shooting spree, watching CCTV with bated breath as the gunman paused on his rampage that would leave 29 people dead. She and 21 others took shelter when they heard rapid gunfire ring through the Terminal 21 shopping mall in the northeastern city of Korat on the weekend. Take a look.
ทางพนักงานเขาก็เลยให้แจ้งว่าคนที่หลบอยู่ข้างหลังร้านสามารถเข้าไปในห้องของพนักงานได้ค่ะและเสร็จแล้วก็ช่วยกันดูกล้องวงจรปิดมันจะเห็นหน้ารูปเป็นภาพหน้าร้านนะคะคนร้ายจะยืนอยู่หน้าร้านใส่ชุดเดียวกันกับทหารเลยค่ะใส่ชุดปิดหน้าค่ะถือปืนแล้วก็มองซ้ายมองขวาค่ะเวลาเราผ่านทุกคนในนั้นจะเงียบคือทุกอย่างปิดไฟปิดแอร์เงียบมากค่ะก็คือเรียกได้ว่าได้ยินแต่เสียงลมหายใจจริงๆอะค่ะอยากให้หาวิธีการแบบป้องกันนะคะว่าทำไมหาสาเหตุนะคะว่ามาจากอะไรทำไมเขาถึงสามารถนำอาวุธออกมาได้อะค่ะแล้วก็ให้ป้องกันให้มากที่สุดอะค่ะหาวิธีที่ทางทหารนะคะว่าทำไมอาวุธสงครามถึงออกมาได้อะค่ะ
The head of the UN Health Agency, WHO, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, said Tuesday that governments should continue to treat containment of the coronavirus as a priority. After earlier describing cases of infection in people with no travel history to China as possibly the tip of the iceberg, the World Health Organization Director General today warned in Geneva that while the spread of the respiratory disease appeared to be slow, it could accelerate. Watch this.
The detection of this small number of cases could be the spark that becomes a bigger fire. But for now, it's only a spark. Our objective remains containment. We call on all countries to use the window of opportunity we have to prevent a bigger fire. As part of those preparations, WHO is working to equip laboratories with the capacity to rapidly diagnose cases. Let's focus on this common enemy against humanity. It attacks any human being, and that's how we should see the threat, as one humanity against a virus which we don't know very well. And we need to answer the questions in order to fight it better.
It's not a voyage into the dark. This is going to reconnect with scientists that we're already working with on a day-to-day basis over many, many years. So this is about increasing the levels of cooperation, not establishing cooperation. The team is there, first and foremost, to learn and to understand not only the investigations that have been carried out so far in China, but also to understand the nature of what has been one of the largest public health responses in history in China. So we both learn more about the virus, to learn more about the investigations that have been carried out by Chinese scientists and epidemiologists, to understand the nature of the public health response, which reaches right from the lowest level in the community right the way through the system to the top. So I think we need to take a risk management approach, accept there's no zero risk, and do our best to ensure that we ensure the safety of people attending all gatherings around the world. Imagine this disease establishing itself within a weaker health system, without those capacities, without those capabilities. This disease may appear relatively mild in the context of a sophisticated health system. That may not be the case should this disease reach a system that is not as capable as that of China.
In other news, torrential downpour leaves parts of the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo inundated, with flooded cars partially submerged in water and some bridges and highways completely overtaken by water. Take a look. Now, according to Euronews, the heavy downpour that struck Sao Paulo from late afternoon on Sunday, February 9th, has caused destruction and chaos during that day. The storm caused rivers to overflow, dozens of floods, landslides, and had brought the city to a halt. According to forecasters, rainfall was the highest recorded in February for the last 37 years. The water level only began to lower in the early hours of Tuesday, February 11th.
Australia's months-long bushfires crisis will likely be over within days, officials said, as heavy rainfall extinguished several massive blazes and was forecast to douse dozens more as downpours swept south. Days of torrential rains have caused flash flooding in New South Wales and Queensland, dampening once raging fires that volunteers had battled in vain for months. Sydney experienced its wettest period in 20 years amid several days of heavy rainfall that led to chaotic scenes across the country. The Bureau of Meteorology said 391.6 millimeters of rain fell in Sydney over the past 4 days, the highest total in such a period since 414.2 were recorded in February 1990. Several major bushfires have been extinguished by the deluge, including a mega blaze that burned through 500,000 hectares, or that's 1.2 million acres north of Sydney, and a similar-sized fire to the city's south, bringing relief to residents and firefighters.
The Film Development Council of the Philippines kicked off Philippine Cinema's centennial year by honoring internationally award-winning film industry members at the agency's 4th annual Film Ambassadors Night. Take a look. This is where Philippines' brightest lights, brightest stars celebrated at the Maybank Performing Arts Theater in Bonifacio Global City, Taguig. Film Ambassadors Night, which inaugurated in 2017, has honored over 200 filmmakers with particular focus on those who represented the Philippines in the international arena. One of the honorees is Carlo Cuevas, winner of the Best Screenplay in International Film Festival Manhattan 2019 for the EBC Films Guerrero. Here's director Carlo Cuevas.
Gulat nga din ako may dumating na lang sa akin ng email, so nag-i-invite yung FDCP na magkakaroon daw ng Film Ambassadors Night, at sobrang nakakatuwa kasi isa nga doon na mare-recognize yung award ng Guerrero. Ayun, nagpapasalamat ako sa FDCP para pag-recognize sa award natin para sa pelikulang Guerrero sa Manhattan, New York. Nagka-award tayo doon ng Best Screenplay. So yun, maraming salamat sa FD. Siyempre, sobrang nakaka-proud at lalo nakaka-inspire na lalo pang gumawa ng pelikula. At the same time, parang masaya kasi yung pakiramdam na kahit sa maliit na bagay, nakakapag-ambag tayo sa success ng pelikulang Pilipino.
Honorees included the country's biggest talents: Brillante Mendoza, Judy Ann Santos, June Robles Lana, Alex Ann Arumpak, and Raymond Ribay Gutierrez. EBC Films aims to provide quality entertaining films that teach moral values by inspiring viewers and motivating them when they're feeling hopeless and influencing people to make the right decisions.
Toronto Raptors star forward Pascal Siakam of Cameroon and Senegalese giant Taco Fall of the Boston Celtics will be among coaches for an international youth camp next week in Chicago. 40 boys and 24 girls from a total of 34 nations will attend the Basketball Without Borders Global Camp on February 14 to 16, being staged as part of the NBA All-Star Game weekend festivities. Here's more.
The defending champion Toronto Raptors were back home at Scotiabank Arena looking to extend their franchise-best 13-game win streak against the Brooklyn Nets. Point guard Kyle Lowry exited the previous contest against the Indiana Pacers with what is being labeled as a whiplash injury. So he sat the game, though the Raptors are hopeful he will make his return before the All-Star game. Speaking of All-Stars, the NBA has officially announced the rosters for the All-Star game, which will take place on February 15th. From the Toronto Raptors, Pascal Siakam will start for Team Giannis, Kyle Lowry will be a reserve, and Nick Nurse will coach the team. This is the first appearance for Siakam and coach Nick Nurse, and the sixth consecutive for Kyle Lowry. The team will be well represented come All-Star Weekend, a fitting way to top off the past year as defending champions. The Raptors are on pace to top last season's record, something many thought would not be possible after losing their finals MVP. But the Raptors keep winning games because of their tough mentality and resiliency throughout all the injuries. Multiple guys have stepped up to either lead the team in scoring or make key defensive adjustments, which has resulted in the second-best record in the Eastern Conference as of Saturday night. This team truly believes they can make it back to the finals to defend their title. Fortunately for the Raptors, they were able to continue their win streak, which now stands at 14 games. Simply unbelievable. Norman Powell and Marc Gasol have missed the last few games, but that hasn't seemed to matter because the Raptors just find ways to win. In Saturday night's contest, Fred VanVleet scored 29 points in the narrow 119-118 victory. Nick Nurse had commented on the contribution of his bench play.
Well, our assistant coaches and stuff try to do a great job keeping those guys ready. I think the mindset of, you never know and stay ready. Maybe helps a little bit once in a while when you don't hit the scouting report because you haven't played for a while too, right? So that's another thing. It's okay.
The Raptors elected to make no moves at the trade deadline, while many of their counterparts in the Eastern Conference tried to stay aggressive. But the faith in this roster has not wavered in general manager Bobby Webster. Earlier in a press conference, he said that, "We haven't been healthy all year, so I think where we are now we'd all take with some improvement." We'll just have to wait and see if his patience will be rewarded as we enter the All-Star Weekend. From Scotiabank Arena, I'm Adian Pangilinan, Eagle News, 1-25.
Thank you, Adian.
Thank you, Adian. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out the boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's the news for tonight. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. From all of us here at Eagle News, I'm Alma Angeles, and we're one with 25.